Hello! This week we are looking at Warton Crag Hillfort, overlooking Morecambe Bay in Lancashire. And it's the story of the total disappearance of said Hillfort over the last century or so, placing it on the Heritage at Risk register. Oh, and we've also got a little bit of a cautionary tale of the perils of weekly YouTubing. Now, note, as we climb up the southern face of Warton Crag, we are rising over a series of natural limestone shelves, adding to the defensiveness of this Hillfort location, if indeed it is an Iron Age Hillfort in the defensive sense. Now, I will refer to it as so-called Iron Age Hillfort for the moment, for reasons that will become clear. But first, I need to now climb this limestone escarpment here, which is the toughest part of our ascent to the summit of Warton Crag. It's actually quite good fun. Oh, better get this. All this effort for realism. So, answers on a postcard as to how long you think that little sequence took to film. So I think the point that I'm trying to make there is that on the southern side of Warton Crag, the Iron Age Hillfort on the top has got some pretty robust natural defences. Wow, look at that. I absolutely love Morecambe Bay. I love the British coast, actually. And when there's a Hillfort next to it, that makes it even better. You can probably tell that it's pretty blustery up here today. Now, this is actually my second attempt to film this video. I was up here yesterday and conditions were even worse, despite the fact that it's supposedly summer according to the weather forecast people. It was blowing a gale and it was really difficult going, and I struggled basically to keep my focus on the narrative. I kept making mistakes. I filmed things in ultra zoom so you could see right up my hooter, filmed things without the microphone on, got lost in the woods, and then, you know, a whole series of other really quite alarming things started to happen. So I thought I'd come back today and give it another go. Till next week, stay tuned. Oh, it's getting a bit chilly now. I've got my jacket on, getting a bit spooky as I approach the Hillfort. So we've climbed up the final of these limestone ledges, or the penultimate one, I should say. And then up there, we have another band of this limestone, and that was used by the, let's just call them Iron Age for the moment, settlers, as the southern defensive boundary of their Hillfort. One final push and we're almost at the summit, but before we visit that, I just want to show you this. Now, this really is a favourite place of mine, this crag here, and I just like to sit here and look at this incredible view of Morecambe Bay, and imagine that the Iron Age, let's call them Iron Age, people that lived up here or did whatever up here, they were looking at ostensibly the same view as me. Obviously not with that nuclear power station, but they would have been familiar with this. Very evocative. This is the summit, and this would have been comfortably within the, let's call it Iron Age settlement that was on top of Warton Crag. But as you can see, you can't see. Everything is buried under this impenetrable blackthorn. But we do have a trig point for all you trig point nutters out there. And also over here, for all of you Armada nutters, that's a Spanish Armada beacon. So, according to both antiquarian reports from the 18th century and work that was done in 2016, lost in all of that thicket there are 3 stone embankments, so stone, not ditches. They couldn't dig ditches up here. So they are protecting that gentler southern side that I mentioned earlier. Do you remember that? No? Well, that's what they're doing. There's a sub-rectangular central enclosure and 5 stone hut circle bases. But as you can see, we can't see. You don't expect me to try and get into that, do you? Oh, you do? Well, that is not happening. On yesterday's abortive attempt to film up here, I did have a sort of a footle around over there on the southern slopes. I got horrendously lost in the dense woodland, but I did find this. I'm not entirely sure. This might possibly be part of one of the outer southern embankments or ramparts, as they were called by the 18th century antiquarians. I'm not convinced, but this is the sort of thing we are looking at here. The first time that anything was identified here, as far as we know anyhow, in terms of it being written down, was 1785. They were enclosing Warton Crag at that time, and in the process of constructing one of the enclosure walls, they destroyed 2 cairns. Both yielded burial urns with human remains in them. And the antiquarians of the day were quick to label these as Iron Age. They were very confident about that. Unfortunately, they weren't quite so confident about looking after the urns because nobody knows where they are. Naturally, the 18th century antiquarians and then the 19th century antiquarians were all over this place as an Iron Age refuge for the brave Brigantians as they held out later on against the Romans. There were a set of bronze Roman scales found up here. I think the only Roman objects found on the Hillfort itself. So that acted as evidence that they were raiding nearby Roman settlements and stealing their stuff. Since the 1960s, and most recently with work carried out in 2016, which involved not even lifting a trowel, they just looked at all the antiquarian reports, looked at the finds that hadn't been carelessly lost, and LiDAR, which you could look at as some sort of overlay. It clearly shows those stone-built southern ramparts that are now buried in this undergrowth and at risk. So one of the modern views is that it wasn't a defensive multivalent fort, that it actually dates back to the end of the 2nd millennium BC, so Bronze Age, and you guessed it, they see it as an occasional meeting place, possibly for ceremonial purposes. Just as much an obsession of modern day historians as the Celts were to the 18th century versions. Over the last few centuries, there have been extensive finds lower down on the crag as well. There are 3 caves at the base of the crag. I don't think any of them are accessible now. They have great names. Dog Hole's Cave, Badger's Hole Cave, and can you guess what the third one is? I'll give you a clue. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. fairy hole cave. And in those, they've found finds going right back to the Pleistocene age, and then through Neolithic, and quite a bit of Roman stuff down there as well. Buried in there is one of the ramparts, I think, and this path here, you can see these stones in it, I think is marking it. Now, it's difficult because there's clearly lots of this natural limestone around, but if you look through there, you can see a pile of boulders through there. Right, don't crucify me for this. I am an amateur antiquarian, that's the disclaimer, but I think here I may have found part of the southern rampart. Can you see we've got this line of boulders here, but then over there, probably mess up the focus, we've got this embankment, and looking at that, it is stacked up boulders on boulders. It's a man-made structure. Can you see that? I am stood on a clear raised what looks like embankment or rampart. We're not meant to call it that now, called the 2016 work, but hopefully that enables you to see it. And then the other side of it, you've got these sort of large natural limestone boulders, but I'm pretty sure that that is it. And then I think another telltale sign, can you see this here? That looks very much like a classic amateur antiquarian trail to me. There's the embankment there, and it's meeting the edge of the natural limestone escarpment there. I'm glad that I managed to find possibly some physical evidence to show you of the Hillfort. I don't quite know how they deal with this. Clearly it is at risk being buried in all of this, but beyond sort of cutting the entire woods down, I don't know what else they can really do. Apart from all of the sort of killing and battling and fighting and diseases, etc., and the very short life expectancy, I think this must have been a really nice place to live. You've got the lush valley of the Loon Valley over that side for crops, etc., and then of course you can supplement your diet with fish and things like that from Morecambe Bay. You won't be able to see it, but just past that large expanse of water there, the focus is going to go crazy, is the M6. So if you're ever driving up past the Lancaster turnoff of the M6, so if you look over to your left, if you're headed north, you'll see Warton Crag prominently from there. Once again, I do hope that I haven't put people off of visiting Warton Crag because of the difficult and inclement weather conditions that you've seen on the video. I'd highly recommend it, as well as the interesting Iron Age Hillfort, Bronze Age Hillfort. There's an amazing range of wildflowers growing on the southern slopes of the crag, so I do highly recommend it. And perhaps if you come back in the winter, you might actually be able to see something of those stone ramparts. Perhaps something I should have thought about. I am quietly relieved that Hedley Thorne politely ignored my offer for him to come here and film a video for his new Hills and Hillforts channel, because in reality, there's not that much to see here. But I think it absolutely meets the remit of WC21 UK Productions Limited to bring you the antiquities that nobody else can be bothered with. We'll be back next week with another video. Buy me a coffee, subscribe, like, all that sort of stuff, and stay safe and stay tuned. I think it was a good idea to come back and film again. I haven't really had the disasters and problems that I experienced yesterday.